Okay.
All right, this is an interview of Wilson Rapp, narrated by his daughter Suzanne Straus, whose father is deceased. This is the 26th of November 2003, 2:30 p.m. Someone's out there.
That's correct.
At the New York State Military Museum, Saratoga Springs, New York. All right, if you'd like to start.
Okay, thank you. My father actually had applied to be heard by the oral history program, but unfortunately died 1 year ago. So I would like to tell his story. Wilson Rapp was the second oldest of 5 boys in his family. 4 of the Rapp boys enlisted in a branch of the military, hoping to serve their country during World War II. The oldest son, Frank Jr., was turned down by the military as he was deaf in 1 ear. But my father and his brother John enlisted in the Army Air Corps. John went on to become a B-17 Navigator who was shot down while flying over Dresden, Germany. John was held as a POW from February to May of 1945. Their brother William enlisted in the Army and served as a forward scout for Generals Patton and Clark in the 3rd Army. William Rapp was awarded 3 Purple Hearts, among other decorations. Their youngest brother Richard lied about his age and enlisted in the Marine Corps at 17 years old. When the Marine Corps discovered his correct age, he was allowed to remain in the military but was kept stateside. Their parents, Frank and Helena Rapp of Rochester, New York, proudly displayed a red and blue flag with 4 silver stars in their front window, symbolizing the number of sons serving their country during wartime. Wilson Rapp enlisted in the United States Army Air Corps on January 2, 1942, 1 month shy of his 27th birthday. Enlistment into the Air Cadet program was limited to young men 26 years of age and under. He scored a grade of 127 out of 150 on the written entrance exam to qualify for the Air Cadet program. After enlistment, he returned to the family home in Rochester, awaiting his assignment to flight school. In June of 1942, Wilson reported to Maxwell Air Force Base, Alabama, for 6 weeks of training. Here he was trained and qualified for the positions of pilot, bombardier, and navigator. From there, he continued his training at the Hawthorne School of Aeronautics in Orangeburg, South Carolina, where his pilot training was interrupted by hurricanes. The following week, Wilson was sent up for a check flight, but had never even been up in a plane yet. He failed to qualify for pilot on the check flight, so Wilson was selected to train for the position of navigator of B-24 bombers. Wilson received orders for Selman Air Force Base, just outside of Monroe, Louisiana. He did not graduate with his original navigator's class, as he was hospitalized for several weeks with ear problems. He did complete his navigator schooling, though, and graduated with Class 43D, and was commissioned as a 2nd lieutenant in the Army Air Corps on July 24, 1943. Throughout the year that he was away from his hometown of Rochester, New York, he continued his relationship with Miss Betty Cocking through the mail. In February of 1943, Betty traveled by train to Monroe, Louisiana to marry Wilson Rapp. Betty's best friend Doris traveled with her to be her maid of honor. Wilson's younger brother, John, also in flight school at the time, traveled to Louisiana to serve as his brother's best man. They were married while he was still an Army Air Corps cadet, which was actually against regulations. They were married on February 27, 1943. Wilson was able to get special permission from the base commander the day before the wedding to get married while still being a cadet. Wilson and Betty remained married for 54 years until Betty's death in 1997. After Wilson received his officer's commission in July of 43, he was stationed in Tucson, Arizona briefly, and then reassigned to El Paso, Texas for 5 months of crew training in B-24s. While training in Texas, he was assigned overseas status. Before departing for overseas, however, Wilson was hospitalized and had ear surgery for a broken eardrum. His shipping out was now delayed. Upon his release from the base hospital, he received new orders to join a new crew out of Wendover Air Force Base from Kansas. he joined his crew in Florida, where he was once again assigned to overseas duty. On March 1st, 1944, Wilson and the rest of his B-24 crew received orders for the war. They flew to Trinidad off the coast of South America and then on to Natal, Brazil. From Brazil, the crew flew east with their top-secret orders that were not to be opened until after crossing the equator. Their secret orders stated that they were being assigned to the European theater with the 8th Air Force. They were headed to Rackheath, England. Wilson flew as navigator on a B-24 bomber named Jack the Ripper. Jack Stevens, whom Wilson flew with for most of the war, piloted their plane. During the next few months, they flew 15 missions with the 8th Air Force, 467th Bomb Group, 791st Bomb Squadron. Some of these missions included the bombing of Berlin on April 29, 1944, the bombing of ball bearing factories in Schweinfurt, Germany. These ball bearing plants were essential to the Germans to keep their precision machinery operating. Schweinfurt was located in the Ruhr Valley deep in southeastern Germany. This was farther from the U.S. bases in England than any 8th Air Force plane had yet penetrated. The range of their fighter protection did not extend this far into Germany, thus requiring the bombers to go it alone, the rest of the way across vast stretches of hostile airspace. The bombers were attacked heavily by Luftwaffe fighters. Though many American bombers were lost during this attack on Schweinfurt, the production of ball bearings was decreased by 1/3. They also participated in the bombing of Nazi submarine pens in Marseille, France, in the south part of France. During his duty in the European theater, Wilson and his crew in the 8th Air Force, along with 2 other Liberator crews, were transferred to the Mediterranean theater of operation and were now stationed to Caesar Fortunato Air Base in Lecce, Italy. The Army Air Corps headquarters decided to transfer some of the more experienced flight crews from the 8th Air Force, as well as the 9th Air Force, to join the 15th Air Force in the Mediterranean theater to strengthen the attacks on Nazi strongholds. Pilot Jack Stevens and his 10-man crew were now assigned to a B-24 Liberator bomber that they named Silver Queen. Wilson Rapp, now promoted to first lieutenant, again flew with Jack Stevens with the 15th Air Force, 98th Bomb Group, 344th Bomb Squadron. While flying in the 15th Air Force, Wilson Rapp successfully completed another 35 bomb missions. Some of these missions included their first mission on March 12, 1944. Another mission included the bombing of railroad yards in Munich, Germany. It was upon their return from this bombing mission that the Tuskegee Airmen safely escorted his squadron back to Italy. His crew also flew the 2nd, 3rd, and 4th bomb missions out of 5 that the Silver Queen flew over Ploesti oil fields in the southeastern corner of Romania. Ploesti was the refinery site for fuel for the Nazi tanks and ground vehicles. It was critical that these fuel reserves be obliterated to slow down the advancement of Nazi ground troops. Ploesti was too far to reach from England, thus the reason to launch missions from bases across the Mediterranean. It was during the 4th mission to Ploesti that anti-aircraft guns in the mountains of Yugoslavia hit their plane. One of the plane's 4 engines was hit, causing them to fly the rest of the mission on 3 engines and also losing a great deal of fuel. The crew managed to complete their mission to Ploesti, drop their bombs, and return to base in Lecce, Italy. However, due to the loss of fuel, the plane landed short of the base and they were forced to do a belly landing in a field. Wilson Rapp injured his back in this crash landing, for which he was awarded the Purple Heart on July 15, 1944 in Lecce, Italy. They also participated in another forced landing in Italy when the plane lost its hydraulic system, thus preventing the landing gear to be lowered. the flight engineer, Tech Sergeant Louis Marcarelli, went below deck and attempted to manually lower the landing gear. It was at this moment that the plane crash landed, killing Sergeant Marcarelli instantly in the belly of the plane. The crew of the Silver Queen also flew to the coast of Italy and bombed an area called San Benedetto del Tronto, which is actually St. Benedict of Tronto. It was here that the Italian Navy was held up in support of the Nazi submarine pens. The B-24s of the 15th Air Force were heavy, long-range bombers that carried 4 tons of bombs. Therefore, these planes were mostly used to knock out targets such as railroad terminals, oil fields, and industrial sites such as ball bearing factories. Within less than a 7-month period of time overseas, my father successfully completed 50 bombing missions with the 8th and 15th Air Force squadrons. He was awarded the Air Force Distinguished Flying Cross for completing 50 missions, the Purple Heart for injuries sustained in their crash landing, 6 campaign stars for major battles. Lieutenant Rapp was also awarded 7 air medals, 1 for every 5 missions with the 15th Air Force, and received ribbons for serving in the European Theater of Operations as well as the Mediterranean Theater of Operations. While serving with the 8th Air Force, the 467th Bomb Group, their unit also received the Presidential Unit Citation for having the best bombing record in the 8th Air Force. Upon his completion of 50 successful bomb missions, First Lieutenant Wilson Rapp received orders to return to the States. He boarded a troop ship on September 18, 1944, and pulled into New York Harbor 10 days later. Wilson was allowed to return home on a 30-day leave before receiving his new orders. In mid-October 1944, Lieutenant Rapp was sent to Selman Field in Monroe, Louisiana, where he served as an instructor in the Navigator School. He remained there until the end of the war, when he was honorably discharged on October 10, 1945. My father's service to his country did not conclude with the end of World War II. First Lieutenant Rapp was later promoted to Captain Rapp and continued his military service through the Air Force Reserves. During this time, he was also awarded the Armed Forces Reserve Medal. At the age of 60, and after 34 and a half years of service to the Air Force and the United States of America, Lieutenant Colonel Wilson A. Rapp retired from the military. At the age of 82, Wilson was awarded 2 awards from the New York State Legislature. He was selected for and received the Conspicuous Service Cross, and in addition later received the Conspicuous Service Star, which is only awarded to veterans who received Purple Hearts. During an interview, after receiving the Conspicuous Service Cross, Wilson Rapp commented, quote, "I'm pleased to receive it. The impressive thing, most of all, is the fact that I got back alive. That was the thing you couldn't buy or award anything for. That was the main satisfaction. I never expected to get back home." My father continued to fly the flag of our country in front of his house on a daily basis until his death at the age of 86. He occasionally spent an afternoon at a local high school talking with students about some of his experiences in World War II. He also continued to volunteer his time through the VFW and visit fellow veterans at a local VA hospital. Wilson Rapp died on October 6, 2002, and was honored with a military funeral in Rochester, New York. And I listed the following medals that Wilson Rapp received for service to his country. He received the Distinguished Flying Cross, the Purple Heart, 7 air medals, European Theater of Operations ribbon with a battle star, Mediterranean Theater of Operations ribbon, 6 campaign stars, Air Cadet Good Conduct Medal, the Presidential Unit Citation, the Armed Forces Reserve Medal, the New York State Conspicuous Service Cross, and the New York State Conspicuous Service Star. Thank you.
Okay. Would you like to hold up some of the
Yes.
photographs?
This is a picture of the Silver Queen and its crew.
Okay, now, can you point out your father in
Yes, he is kneeling in the front row and is right there.
You can hold it back a little bit.
Okay.
And come in on it.
I can give this to you too,
Oh, great.
because it's a copy.
Nice. Nice decoration on the plane.
Mhm.
Okay.
I
Yeah.
told my father that. And I also have a photo of his crew, of his plane. This is the Silver Queen in flight.
Okay, can you hold it back towards you more?
Okay. And actually, there's a funny story behind this. This was the time in the war when B-17s were getting the most publicity
Uh-huh.
for the Air Force, and the B-24 crews were getting extremely angry with the press. So finally, they talked the press photographers into going up with them for a flight, and the press took a picture of my father's plane, and if you look very closely, the side gunner is mooning the camera.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Okay. And I also have a photograph of my mother and father on their wedding day. And my father was flying, wearing his Air Force cadet uniform, because he was still a cadet at the time.
Okay.
I have a picture of the crash landing of their plane, in which he was injured.
Okay.
And also a picture of him receiving his Purple Heart in Lecce, Italy.
Okay.
I have a copy of a newspaper article that I'll gladly give you, and it was written sometime, I believe, in 1942 about he and his brothers serving in the military, and it was prior to his youngest brother going into the Marines. So it talks about himself, his brother John, who was in the Army Air Corps, and his brother William, who was in the Army. And the title of it is 3 Rapp Boys Set Out to Rap the Japs. This was in a Rochester newspaper. I have two of the silk maps that he carried with him, and this one is Angola, Egyptian, Sudan. Amazing, they're still in such good shape. And I have one of Italy. This is northern Italy. And I believe they carried these with them in case of forced landings so they could find their whereabouts on the ground.
Right. Okay.
Okay. I also brought his medals to share with you.
Sure.
My father received the Distinguished Flying Cross.
Okay, got it.
The Purple Heart.
Okay.
He also received the Air Medal with 3 oak leaf clusters. The one with the oak leaf clusters is here.
Okay, got it.
And his ribbon for serving in the European and Mediterranean theaters of operation.
Okay.
And a victory medal that he received. This is the victory medal.
Okay.
And the Army Good Conduct Medal.
Can you hold that back just a little bit because it's blurring on me? Okay.
And then, as as I mentioned, at the age of 82, he received the Conspicuous Service Cross from the New York State Legislature,
Okay.
and also received the Conspicuous Service Star.
Okay.
I also found a patch from that he wore on his uniform when he was a cadet in the Army Air Corps Navigator School.
Okay.
The wings that were pinned on him when he completed Navigator training.
Okay.
And this is a patch for the Army Air Corps that all the Air Force men wore. Okay.
Okay.
And I guess this is a unique one. This is for the 15th Air Force.
Yes, it's a theater-made patch. It looks
Okay.
like it's a, they used silver bullion thread on it.
Okay.
It's not coming in too clearly for some reason, but probably because it's a dark background.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And I also brought with me some of his flight plans, and I'll gladly leave these with you to be copied.
Okay.
One of these includes the bombing of Berlin, and I thought what was most interesting on these included charts showing the flight formations.
Oh. Okay.
And another one of the documents is a report of a kill, and it talks about how they shot down enemy aircraft, and it's described in great detail.
Okay.
And I believe that's all.
All right. Well, thank you so much.
Yes, thank you. Out of here.
And that's the
The
original.
crew, right, the original photograph of the crew of the Silver Queen. And again, Wilson Rapp is located down in this corner, kneeling.
Okay. All right. Do you know if any of the other fellows in the photo are still living?
Yes, the pilot, which I believe is this gentleman here, is Jack Stevens, and he and my father remain good friends right up until my dad's death. Jack lives in San Diego, California, and is very active in their bomb group reunions.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Do you know if any of the other crewmen are still living?
Well, I also know that the gentleman, the tech sergeant that I referred to that was killed in the crash landing, Tech Sergeant Marcarelli, is this gentleman right here.
Okay.
And he was the one that was killed.
Okay.
And they have a website that they're using to try to locate some of the other men. I believe they think one or two of them are still also alive,
Oh.
but they're having a hard time tracking them down.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.